This is the new Lee Valley #1 plane. You can see it's really a tiny and sweet thing. I had asked Rob Lee a number of years ago whether he would make either a #1 or a #2 plane that would be really good for children, and they finally come out with this, and this is the kind of tool that a grandfather would absolutely love to put into the hands of his grandchild to pass along the love of woodworking. It may not be something that you'd leave your grandchild with to work alone, but it's always best that we work with others and share that relationship of love of learning. So I have the iron already honed with a secondary bevel, so now it's time to reassemble the plane. And I'll tighten this. Now this is what's called a bevel up plane, and you can see that the plane iron has the bevel ground on the top side rather than on the bottom side, as would an older #1 from Stanley. But that's exactly the way it goes together, and that provides the right cutting angle by having the bevel up. This controls the angle of the blade here, as you can see. This tightens the plane iron in the plane, and this knob allows you to adjust the amount of opening to allow the shaving to pass through. The very small opening will stop your shavings from going through, but it will also, if it's open just the right amount, it will stop your plane from digging in deep and gouging out the wood. So you want to pay attention to this underside as well. You'll notice that this is an exquisitely crafted piece of equipment, and so I'm excited to have one here to review and share with you. I have two diamond stones here. One is 600 grit and the other is 1000 grit. And so this is the small plane iron for a Veritas #1. It's a new plane from Lee Valley. I start with the 600 grit, and this is laid flat. And when you're honing a blade, it's got to be smooth on both sides, not just on the beveled edge, but on the back side as well. And you can see the little bit of steel that's coming off the blade as I work. Now this is the ground edge right here, and because this is such a small blade, I'm going to do it freehand rather than by using a honing jig, which would be hard to hold this. So I have to be very careful. I lay it down to where I can feel it on the bevel, raise it up very slightly to get that secondary bevel, and move it back and forth, trying to keep my hand perfectly steady. You'll notice that I'm rotating my arm at the shoulder, and then I can go here to the finer grit. I do the same thing, lift it up very slightly. And this is with the finer grit, trying to hold it at the same angle as I go, relying on the rotation at my shoulder to make sure that my geometry is smooth. And there you can see the development of a very slight secondary bevel, and that's all I need to make sure that this is honed to take a very nice cut on wood. I'm going to go over here and use a little bit of rouge on a piece of leather to do a final polish. This is the first time I've used this leather, but that should be sharp enough to do that test where people say, does it shave my arm? Yep, it does a good job. That's one of the ways that you can test it. Another way is just to simply look down that edge, and if you see no light reflected back at you, you know you've done a good job. You can also test it by putting it back in the plane and seeing how it cuts wood. I have a piece of curly soft maple to use for my test, and so you can see that this is a little bit small for my hand, but it's just perfect for a 5-year-old to go to work on wood. And so I hold it down at the front. I need to get it clamped in tighter. Okay. Also want to take a thinner shaving, so I'm going to adjust it here and dial it back just a little bit. I'm still going to check the front here to see that I get my opening narrow. When you're introducing your child to planing wood, you may want to start with something a little softer that doesn't take quite as much effort. So a piece of white pine would be perfect. You remember how rough that was at the start? And now your fingers are moving smoothly across the wood, and it tells you that you've done a good job. And it provides tactile feedback. And so there's a thing called effort-driven rewards, where you engage your body in feeling what you've done, and with that you alleviate concerns and anxieties and possibly alleviate depression.